Well, among his many talents, Dr. Lowell Catlett is a professor, advisor, lecturer, and above all, a futurist. Now, his expertise on how emerging technologies affect daily life has been sought by such prestigious institutions as MIT, Harvard, and Cornell. Now, I caught up with Dr. Catlett at this year's Revolution Wind Conference in Oklahoma City to get his view on the future of an environmentally sustainable economy. Dr. Catlett, how much has environmental impact? How much is it impacting our economy?
Probably more so than just about anything right now, simply because we have 3 full generations in the workforce now that grew up in an environment where the economy was predicated upon environment being part of that economy. So those generations know that you have to have clean water to get by. So we all grew up cleaning up rivers, cleaning up the atmosphere. And now we're taking it to the next level where we are saying, you know, there's a lot of sustainable energy, biodiesel, solar, wind in the Great Plains. So it's a generational thing. My father's generation was basically trying to get by and build a world, and we're now coming back saying, okay, but let's make it a better world. And so it's got great legs.
In any way, could this be a double-edged sword in terms of maybe regulation to the cost-benefit factor?
Oh, there's no question. And I also tell people to understand there's no substitute for big infrastructures. I don't know about you, but I can remember the first science class I had where I was told that by 1980 there would be no more fossil fuel. You know, and I'm thinking, gee, I don't even have a driver's license and we're going to run out of gasoline. But guess what? Every year we find more provable reserves. And it's not because we can't intellectually know that there's a finite amount of oil. It's just technology and a lot of infrastructure in the petroleum industry will find those. So we will have a major use of energy in the petroleum complex simply because of the price trade-off, because they can do it very efficiently. And the alternative energies may have to have, in the case of ethanol, subsidies for a while to get the technology, because when the price of oil is 30 bucks a barrel, you can't make ethanol out of corn. It's got a better use in animal feed. But at $60 a barrel for petroleum, then you can have other alternative compete. So it's that trade-off. But the thing that forces the trade-off, either by subsidies or by people just saying, you know what, I'll pay a little bit more if I know my utility is getting wind, a green energy source in Oklahoma, and helping the environment. So because we have those generations that value it and are willing to pay for it.
From an economic standpoint, can our society afford not to invest in this new green energy?
I don't think we cannot afford to do it, simply because, as we found out, if you don't take advantage of these things, it's like waste. You can only throw so much plastic and glass and stuff in a landfill, and then at some point the cost of those landfills to maintain them becomes so high that it becomes economically advantageous to start a recycling program to keep the amount of refuse in a landfill down. So you have to reach that cusp to where you understand that everything we do has a trade-off, and energy is one of those. If you're going to have nuclear, you have a trade-off. If you're going to have petroleum-based energy, you have a trade-off. And if you're going to have green energy, it has to compete with the others, so the trade-off may be you have no residual, but you may have to subsidize it for a period of time until it becomes cost-effective. But you really can't, in the long run, afford not to, because you simply, we have a saying in agriculture that not even pigs eat and defecate in the same place, okay? And as humans, we're finding that out. You can only move the waste products away so long and get it out of sight, out of mind, until it comes back. And you have to basically understand we all live, and you have to have clean air and clean water, and you have to have renewable energy to the extent that we as a species will live longer. So it's economically important to maintain those.
As a futurist, do you see these changes happening sooner than later?
I see them happening as quick as people will understand the trade-off of the cost. And I think you'll find that the generation now that we call the Y generation is probably the most philanthropic generation since my parents' generation, which was called by Tom Brokaw the greatest generation. They're very philanthropic in causes, and they are very willing to put their money on causes. As I use the example, my generation, we earned money so we could go to Mazatlan for spring break, or to fundraisers at college so we could have a beer party. 38% of that generation, spring break is to go to work in Habitat for Humanity or for humanitarian causes, and any fundraisers they have at universities, the vast majority of them are for philanthropic causes. It is ingrained in their soul and in their being that we're all in this environment together and we can't separate us out.
So which comes first, attitude or the investment?
Well, in our society where we've got several generations, we have to take both of them. You have to have those investments to give a business. Ethanol, I use the example with ethanol and corn. If we didn't subsidize ethanol, we're now on our 8th generation of new fermentation technology that if we hadn't been subsidizing ethanol, we would be that far behind in developing the next level of ethanol, which will be cellulosic-based ethanol. But if we hadn't subsidized it for 20 years, then we wouldn't have the ability to make that leapfrog into the next generation. So it takes part of that, and it takes the attitude to do it too. Some generations, some people, recycling, but when it's an attitude and it's ingrained in you, it's just second nature.
At the same time, it does seem that a lot of things we talk about when we talk about renewable energy are just over the horizon. And it seems like for a long time, they've just been over the horizon.
Yeah, and probably the one that is always just over the horizon more than anything is fusion in the nuclear arena. It just seems like there's a promise that we'll get fusion someday, this free energy. You know, it's just, and that's that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't keep working on it, but that one has wind. We had a wind generator. I'm 60 years of age. We had a wind generator for our electric source. First 5 years on the ranch before the rural electrification got a power line, we had an old wind generator on this. So certain technologies aren't on the horizon, and in fact, many have been used for a long time. Solar just keeps moving along. Each new year we get a more efficient solar cell. So that over the horizon moves us to a point now, and we just signed an agreement on our college ranch in New Mexico to do a test of a new technology in solar panels, which is a direct conversion of thermal to electricity. And we have a lot of geothermal wells in southern New Mexico, and they're taking hot water, just has to be 140 degrees. At 140 degrees, the hot water moving over a film, this new solar panel, and it doesn't create steam. It creates electricity at 140 degrees. It's called thermoelectric coupling, and it's done. And we're just signed the agreement to put it in because we have a 20,000-foot geothermal well that's 400 degrees. So those are the next generation of them, but each one brings another efficiency, a better, cheaper alternative to this movement.
What's your best advice for America?
I think to not lose sight of the fact that we have had 13 recessions. We may be in one right now, and I'm not making light of it, but we naturally go through them. And don't lose sight of the fact that we go through recessions, and after each recession, Americans come back stronger than before the recession. Recessions are when people get creative. It's kind of a time when we have to do something different. I always use the expression that bull markets make idiots out of all of us because we get fat, we get lazy when things are good. And then when things get a little bit tight, patents go up, new business starts go up. And in this whole alternative green arena, there are so many opportunities, especially in a state that is rich in natural resources of all kinds. Solar, phenomenal agriculture base in Oklahoma, phenomenal wind base in almost all arenas, phenomenal water base. You got the natural resources in every arena to have a phenomenal export of energy like you've never dreamed possible.